We have one more video class, this one being recorded at night, differently than the usual, and I hope you enjoy this, guys. Today we are going to get started into book 4, a book which I didn't have. So shouts to Amanda for helping me out with this. Thank you so much. Much, honey. Thank you a lot. Well, without further ado, guys, let's get started because we're starting book 4 talking about conditional clauses. But before getting to the conditional clauses, oh, you see there that I have the blackboard upper here? That's my camera right here. And the material is to the left. All right. So there is a question right there. What if things had been different? But before I go to this topic, let me just change my lights here, which are blinking in a way that I don't like. Okay, that feels better now. Now I have better lights. That is great. So, well, guys, what if things had been different? That is the very first question we have here. Let me read this topic for you here, guys. Okay? So a little bit of zoom there. Todos nós já fizemos algo do qual nos arrependemos. Muitas vezes ficamos com aquilo na cabeça, pensando em diversas maneiras de como poderíamos tê-lo feito de maneira diferente. Pensar demais sobre o que aconteceu pode ser prejudicial, mas será que também pode ter algum benefício? O que você acha? Nessa unidade, você conhecerá as orações condicionais no inglês, em sua forma e significado. Você perceberá como os tempos verbais vão influenciar no sentido veiculado para cada oração, e a partir deles poderá identificar e produzir enunciados do zero, first, second, third, and mixed conditionals. Actually pretty hard, guys. Esse recurso linguístico o ajudará a falar sobre os eventos presentes, eventos de um futuro possível ou improvável e eventos passados. A seguir, você estudará os phrasal verbs e se surpreenderá com quão numerosos podem ser. A partir deles, você poderá entender melhor a lógica da língua inglesa e sua característica tão saliente de produzir novas expressões a partir da combinação de palavras. Well, conditional clauses. So, guys, the conditional clauses, they actually present an event, generally a phrase that starts with if, like a condition for an event, all right, expressed by the main phrase as in this example down below here. Europe to Trump. If you want a trade war, attention in this part, if you want a trade war, we actually put it a conditional clause by using if. So it's virtually a hypothetical sentence. You get one. Well, I'm gonna advance you guys that this phrase is in the first conditional. You're gonna see it later that the first conditional is marked by future consequences towards a hypothetical clause, generally used with if. For zero and first conditionals, you can actually use when as well as if, but we're gonna check it out later. So in this case here, the phrase starts with if, which is the condition for the second part of the phrase to take part. In this case here, to happen a war, it is required Trump to will for that. So that's the case that we use if you want a trade war. You got one. Well, let's take a look though into the real conditionals 0 and first, which are the easiest ones, and as I said before, can mix up with if for hypothetical clauses or when for more realistic clauses. All right. So the real conditional express actions or events whose probability of happening is very high. In this way, they are considered 0 and first conditions. The 0 conditional is also known as factual, which means expressing facts or things that generally happen in certain conditions. Let me use an example of a fact and thing that happens, that generally happens, actually not generally, but always happens in a certain condition. Alright guys, let me write here in the blackboard for you guys to take a look. So if I put water in the fridge, it becomes ice. Actually, it doesn't matter unless the fridge is turned off, right? But in regular conditions, generally, if you put water in a fridge, it will become ice, or it becomes ice. Infinitive, right? Because it always becomes ice. So 0 conditional is mainly used to express factual situations, things that always happen in certain conditions, right? Well, so that because it expresses a fixed condition between two events. So if X happens, the if clause, Y also happens, which is the main cause. So in this case here, if I put water in the fridge, that is my if clause. When it becomes ice is my main clause. Main clause. I'm sorry. Which means now and always, right? That means that it is directly related to the verbal tenses which they are applying, like the construction of the phrase. So if there are gray clouds in the sky and the temperature rises, it rains, it's factual. It generally happens in these circumstances. So if plus present tense can have a consequence in a present tense, right? Let me use a personal example that can be applied to pretty much everyone here. So, like, if we eat fast food every day, we get fat, right? This is pretty much obvious, isn't it? Well, let's remember that the verbal tense simple present indicates habits and facts. Thus, when it is applied in the conditional, we need to basically define the probabilities for what is going on or not. The 0 conditional can also describe the habits in the past, and in this case, the verbal tense is the past simple. In the case, in my time, if we wanted to talk to friends, we walked to their houses. In this case, we change present to past, remaining the same factual condition. Alright? I insist here that this if can also be substituted by when. Right? For example, in my time, when we want to talk with friends, we walked to their houses. The actual meaning of the phrase doesn't change that much. So, you know what I'm saying? You can see that in this kind of conditional, the conjunction if is used with a familiar sense as when, which I mentioned seconds ago. And for example, when there are gray clouds in the sky and the temperature rises, it rains, the meaning is not affected. And the other example that I previously mentioned, right? Let's zoom it up here. So these phrases, they actually build up a conditional. They generally vary their ordering, or they can basically vary their order, which means that it doesn't matter if my conditional clauses goes before the main clause or afterwards. The meaning is still going to be the same, right? Let's take a look here. If he feels guilty, he buys her flowers, or he buys her flowers if he feels guilty. You know what I'm saying? The order does not affect the meaning of the sentence itself. Let's talk a little about the stating facts. If water hits 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. This is a scientific fact, which in general is always true. And by that, the if clause will be representing something that always happens, as I previously mentioned. If I miss the 8 o'clock train, I am late for work. Although this phrase does not represent a scientific fact, this is a fact for the speaker. So, which means that every single time the if clause happens, a main clause also becomes true, becomes concrete. Let's take a look at some advice examples using the same. If you leave work late, get a taxi. Don't walk alone at night. If your workmates are unfair to you again, tell your boss. You can see that the main clause there is in the imperative case, like defining an order, although it's more as an advice, not an order, but we still call it imperative case. All right? Let me use another example here. You can use both if or when, so it doesn't matter, but like, if you drink, don't drive. It's an imperative case right here. You know what I'm saying? There you go, guys. Let's take a look at some instructions here. So, if the product gives you allergy, stop its usage immediately. If you want to order, press this button and a waiter comes to your table. In both cases, they are instructions, right? So this is a different use for our dear conditional clauses, mainly the zero condition. So here we have a step-by-step activity which you guys can answer, and I will correct in our next video class. But before, we're gonna take a look at the first conditional here. And the first conditional is basically the responsible for predictions. Although I'm gonna be still using if and when to define my if clauses, my conditional clauses, the consequences right now are gonna be represented differently, either as a prediction or representing future, imminent future though. So in this case here, in other words, it is responsible to express actions that are most likely going to happen. If I visit Anne Frank's museum, I'll buy you a copy of her diary. Most likely. And you see that I represent my if clause again with if or when, plus present tense, like if I visit. if one day I visit, right? But my consequence here is represented by the modal verb will that generates a future meaning into the phrase itself. If the past is too difficult, I'll fail. A prediction right here. A main clause is the result, the probable result of the if clause. In this conditional, the phrase is generally formed by the modal will, one of the indicators of future. One of the indicators. But remember that this is a most likely insert future, which means an unsure future, which means you're not sure about it. That's the meaning of unsure, right? Which is also implied to predictions, promises, spontaneous decisions, etc. Although other similar expressions can occupy will's place in first conditional, like can or the verb to be plus going to, which is also a representative of future, direct representative of future. Let's take a look at some examples applying both of them, right? If we get early, we can find really good seats. If we get early, we can find really good seats. If he lies once again, we're going to have a big argument. Just remember, you guys, that you can't, like, the position doesn't matter. Like, the main clause can be before, and the if clause can go afterwards. We can find really good seats if we get here early, or we're going to have a big argument if he lies once again. So you can change even the intonation of your speech. You know what I'm saying? And here we have some possible future results, right? Let's check it out. The cartoon right here. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, right? What's up today? Nothing so far. So far? Well, you never know. Something could happen today. And if anything does by goalie, I'm going to be ready for it. And she says, I need a suit like that. Like talking about the astronaut suit, the astronaut helmet, right? Yeah. Well, in this cartoon right there, the mother wants to know why Calvin says nothing to the moment or nothing so far. When she asks what are the news of the day. But in the third parter, the boy says, and if anything does by goalie, I'm going to be ready for it. Calvin answers that something can happen, and if it happens, he's going to be ready for that. If it happens, he's going to be ready for that. Do you see the way I speak that phrase? Do you see the way I say it? If something happens, he's gonna be ready for that. That's a fast-paced speech which you can always use. So not necessarily will in this case, right? So let's take a look at some predictions using the modal might. He might lose his temper if you don't do as he pleases. In this example here, the modal might emphasizes the idea of a future possibility, which characterizes something like a prediction about the behavior of somebody's behavior, right? A prediction of somebody's behavior, right? Like, he might lose his temper. I might lose my mind. I might go crazy. If I win in the lottery. I don't know. I might go crazy. You know what I'm saying? For advices, they can also be used right there. And if you're traveling abroad, you should double check the requirements to enter the country. You should double check. You see that the modal will is actually not mandatory right there. We can change the meaning of our phrase in several forms, many different ways, right? Sorry by the lagging here because I'm actually mirroring the image from my MacBook to a monitor, and there is a 5 milliseconds delay from the 4K HDMI port passing through Thunderbolt 2 until to the HDMI 4K output in the monitor. That causes a delay between the sound and the image right there. So I apologize about that, but I think the quality of the filming is actually bad. Well, second and third condition. Third is actually, you guys are most likely not going to use the third conditional. Let's take a look at the second and third. So unreal conditionals are the ones who express situations whose possibility of happening is lower. Like hypothetical scenarios, right? So the second conditional is a resource used to treat actions from the present or the future who are imaginary or unlikely to happen. Unlikely to happen in the future, though, right? But pay attention to that. If we had more time, we would take a very long vacation abroad. If plus past tense with my condition, my main clause represented by would, a hypothetical conditional clause. If I have more time, I'm representing this in the past. So this situation is virtually unreal. We would take a very long vacation abroad. A general case, we're going to be using would. Although other models can be also used, like could or might. Let's take a look at the examples there. If you talk less and listen more, you could avoid many uncomfortable situations. If my grandparents were millionaire, my family might inherit a fortune. If you talked less, hypothetical, unreal, because the person talks a lot, so this thing is actually not real at all. So if you talk less, if you listen more, you could avoid uncomfortable situations. Can I say you would avoid? Yes. The meaning there is changed just slightly by the model right there. My grandparents were millionaire. They are not. If they were, you know what I'm saying? My family might inherit a fortune. It most likely won't. Right? Let's take a look at some examples of hypothetical situations. What a hot day. If we had a pool, which means we don't have, if we had a pool in our house, I'd never get out of it, which means that we don't have the pool. So this phrase represents a hypothetical situation. Look at that. Garfield, if you ever got out of bed, the world would probably end. No need for panic. World. Why? Because he's not going to get out of his bed, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Unlikely future events. And the example of lottery right there. Are you guys checking that out? Example of lottery, which I previously mentioned, right? I think this is the most cliche. Is the most cliche example one can use, right? If I won the lottery, I would immediately invest the money on video games. which means that are just few chances or little chances, even though none or no chances at all, that the speaker will win in life. You know what I'm saying? You can use advices or suggestions. If I were you, oh teacher, isn't it if I was you? No, it's if I were you. If I were you, not if I was. If I were you, all right? If I were you, I will look for a specialist. This is serious. So take a look that for advices I use if I were you, not if I was. Okay? Okay? Okay. Untrue situations, and here it comes the third conditional, guys. I always knew he wasn't a loyal friend. If he were your true friend, no, wait a second. This is the second conditional again. We're still not in the third. I always knew he wasn't a loyal friend. If he were your true friend, he would never betray you. Same case in real situation. Now let's go to the third conditional because we're running out of time. I can't do video classes that long. So differently from the other conditionals that treat present and future, this is the only one who treats specifically past events. By this reason, it necessarily expresses the idea of impossibility. You know what I'm saying? To talk about something that could have happened, but did not. But did not. You know what I'm saying? In this case, we're going to be using if plus past perfect with a perfect modal as the example domino. If I had waited a week, I would have bought the tickets with this. If I had waited, I would have bought. Let's take a look at this example. The person had bought the PS5 1 week ago. If I had waited for the tax reduction, I would have paid less for the PS5. Which means that I didn't. Which means that this person bought the PS5 before the tax reduction. Shouts to Bolsonaro, who has reduced 10% of IPI from video games. What happened to him? Not that much. Even though for those who have bought the PS5 before that price cut down, they might be a little bit disappointed to you, Bolsonaro. You could have done it earlier. You could have, brother. You could have. You know what I'm saying? We can use it to talk about criticism, about past acts, and regrets. Criticism, you might have been successful if you had listened to my advice, and regrets, if I had known what great concert it would be, I would have known. Well, guys, I'm gonna get you guys this mandatory stop here, and in the next from pages, let me just check out what pages that. Page 9 and 10. So page 9 and 10 is gonna be a homework. Pages 9 and 10 homework, and as well as page 5 and 6. So 5 and 6, 9 and 10, okay? Homework, page 9 and 6, 5 and 10. And I'm going to come back next week, catch you guys next time with the homework correction and new content, which is later. Bye-bye.